Hey everyone, it's Josh from Joshua.com, and you're joining me for podcast number 11, where I have the amazing pleasure of being able to interview Joshua D. Boxer. Now, I came to know Joshua from attending the webinar summit that was held and run by Joel Patterson over in Utah a few months ago, but it was incredible to be able to meet this guy, someone who's come from the mortgage background and slowly merged into the consulting field for internet marketing, servicing a lot of primarily local clients, and then just recently, I think even as short as 3 months ago, begun releasing his own internet marketing products to assist other local marketers in getting their clients, better ranked in Google, or making it a lot easier for people to be able to do the things that he currently does. So it's an awesome, opportunity. I'm really glad to have him on the call, and thank you very much for joining me, Josh.
Yeah, my pleasure, Josh, and it's great to be here.
Now, I'm going to try and keep this from being, thanks, Josh. You're welcome, Josh, through most of the call. But would you be able to run down your story one more time for me, because I love hearing it and could listen to it all day, just about how you went from your offline job and then have slowly progressed to where you are as of now?
Yeah, sure. Well, I started a long time ago in sales, and I always had an entrepreneurial spirit and wasn't really employable. So I always wanted jobs where I could sort of be my own boss and make my own times and do what I wanted to do. And mortgages back in the early 2000s was a great business, because just like that, you could work when you wanted to, but you could make exponential amounts of money. And I learned a lot when I joined the mortgage industry here in Florida. I actually grew up in England and then, decided to move to Florida mainly for the sun. And when I started working in mortgages, I realized that I was just sort of like everyone else, picking up the phone, making calls all day, all night, trying to get applications, having people hanging up on me, and cursing me out. And really, it just wasn't fun. Even though it was very lucrative, it wasn't fun. It wasn't really what I wanted. So I tried to find a better way. And looking on the internet in different places, I found different mentors and different people that I could learn from to learn sort of direct marketing strategies, direct response marketing strategies. And what I really wanted to build was a system that would bring me my clients and my borrowers without me having to go and beg them for business. So,
right.
The transition was really amazing, going from calling people and begging and arguing over half a point to building these systems that brought me my clients and then, charging them 5% and no one ever questioning it. And really, they were just happy to even be working with me.
Right.
So, yeah, that was a great transition, really. And what I did was, basically, I built myself, lead capture forms. I built myself web presences. I built my authority in the industry, and I used direct mail to bring them to my website. And it was really amazing, the transformation. And through learning through all of that, I learned a lot about the internet and how to rank sites and how to, get people to respond and convert from a viewer to a possible customer. And when that happened, I built this huge knowledge, and then suddenly the mortgage industry in America just crashed completely. And in one day, I remember there was 1 month I had about $220,000 worth of business that was supposed to close. And 3 days before closing, for an entire building, I was doing all the mortgages for them. The lender pulled out and told me, we're not going to do the deal. And I got to tell you, seeing that money just disappear before my eyes, really, it was crazy. And I had to call everyone and tell them and say, listen, I can't do this deal. I'm sorry. I know we've been working on it for months. And I was a bit lost at that time. And I was like, what should I do now? All these banks are closing down. I have all these borrowers begging to do mortgages with me, but I just can't help anyone. And so what I did was, luckily I'd saved some money, and I did some traveling, and I toured the world, and I opened my mind to it, and I realized, I had all this knowledge, and I knew that people could benefit from it. And I knew that I could help businesses to get more business and use the same strategies that I use of lead capture and building authority and really putting yourself out there ahead of the rest of your competition, so that people, it's not a question between you or someone else and who's got the better price, but it's, can I work with you because you're the authority? Okay. So for me, it was sort of a natural progression to go and work with other businesses. And, I just sort of put myself out there, and, I guess I was quite fortunate that, people wanted to work with me and they could see the power of what I had to offer. And then I started getting my clients and, working with them and getting them great results. And I built this consultancy business off the base of that. And then I remember, I heard a story about Henry Ford. And, when he was building his cars, he used to have a conveyor belt and sort of, it was that system that he built to get cars built quickly and cheaply, where it was an assembly line. Now, on the assembly line, there was wood underneath the cars. And because there was a lot of fire and stuff and all this, at the end of the line, all the wood would be burnt and sort of sitting in a pile, and then they would just throw it away. Well, one day he was walking through the factory, and he saw this fired, burnt wood, and he was like, "Isn't that coal?" And he was like, "Maybe we can start selling coal." And so he built a whole company selling coal off the byproducts of his business. And he actually started to make more money in the beginning from the coal than he was from the cars. And that, it's truly an amazing story. I'm like, he is a genius. I'm not sure if you have Kingsford coal in Australia, New Zealand or Australia or around that area, but over here we have a big company called Kingsford. Massive coal company, and that was actually the company that he had started from Ford.
Okay.
And so basically I thought to myself, I remember after hearing it and stuff, and I was thinking, I build all these tools for my businesses, and I have these strategies I use, and I'm sure that, people could benefit from these things. And really it was, I just went out there with some help from some of my mastermind members. They, really encouraged me to get my products and my tools out there. And once I released them to the public, I got great responses, and, really my whole business has sort of exploded since then as well, because once you go to the other side of being a service provider and you also become a teacher, it's amazing the changes that can happen.
And so when you talk about your consultancy company, was it solely lead generation, or was it also optimization for companies online?
Well, in the beginning, I sort of led with Google, and I still, I guess I do in a way as my lead in to sort of get my foot in the door when I do prospect. And I don't do as much prospecting as I used to, because I now get quite a lot of referrals and business coming towards me. But when I prospect, I like to use Google because it's something that people can recognize and people can see. But my main goal is really to help them get more business as cheaply as possible.
Okay.
So what I want to do is I want to go in there. I want to look at their business, and I spend the first meeting with them asking them about, how their business started, how they got into it, really sort of getting to understand their core values and what they're really looking for. And then I see where the holes are in their business and, what ways I think we can immediately improve it. And then as time goes on, I like to add additional revenue streams to their business as well. So for me, really, everything is tailored towards the business. But I guess in the beginning, yes, I did sort of start with an SEO type thing. And, I was more of a generalist SEO guy. So I would just help people get their sites ranked. Now I specialize in doctors and restaurants, mainly doctors, though, because, I've learned really very well how to deal with that industry and, what their needs are, what their concerns are, and the legal requirements of what they need. And so I like to focus on them and help them the best way I can.
See, I like how you've niched down into the medical sector. And for a lot of local marketers or people that are looking to get their business out to more people, it's a great way for them to understand the process and then to see the value. If you could just detail as an example why you chose to go into the medical sector, other than the fact that you know a lot about the content.
Sure, yes, of course. And I only really learned about it the more I did it. But the key for me was when I was sort of a generalist, I remember that, I sort of went back to being a commodity, like I was in the beginning with the mortgages when I was, sitting on the phone dialing for dollars. And basically, there's 100,000 SEO people out there, and they're all, vying for the same type of business. But as soon as I became the medical marketing expert, well, it wasn't really a question anymore. Should they work with me or should they work with the other person? Because it was obvious that they needed to work with me. I was the expert in their field. The reason I chose doctors was for two reasons. One, I know that they have a budget and they understand that they need to do marketing. And so that was very important for me. I don't want to work with clients that don't have a predetermined budget for their business and they know they have to advertise. And I
Right.
don't want to, I don't want to work with someone that I have to convince that they need my service. So that was the first thing that was very important for me. Also, I knew that if I was going to niche down, I had to niche into a field where there was multiple verticals within that niche. Because, if you just go into, say, the plumbing niche or something like that, well, yeah, you could do plumbing, but then, there might be emergency plumbers or this type of plumber, but there's not that many. While as with doctors, I know that I can target all the different types of doctors and still be under my brand of the medical marketing expert. So I would be able to do podiatrists one week, pediatricians the next week, optometrists the next week. And, I wouldn't ever run out of enough business to go after. Because something that's very important for me is I don't like to cannibalize my efforts. So I don't work with two clients in the same area that do the same thing. Because I want to make one person the dominant person. So as I said, it was very important for me to have many verticals within whatever niche I chose.
It's a great tip too, because for a lot of people, they may choose to just stick with that generalized. So for this, what I'm talking about is obviously on the same page as when you find a client, you're looking for a certain, I guess, keyword search phrases that you'd go after on the net. Then many people may simply leave it as a broader term like lawyers plus a location for a keyword to sell to a client. But really what you're saying is to go even deeper than that. You get into divorce lawyers, you get into custody lawyers, you get into DIY lawyers, all of those, so that you can still afford to stay in the lawyer area or the medical area. But then, like you say, all those verticals, they open you up and they certainly don't limit you on what continuing business you can get through the door.
Yeah, absolutely. And the wonderful thing is that, when you work with doctors, and you said lawyers, and I think lawyers are a very good field as well as restaurants, because they also, both those have very many verticals within them. When you work with that type of industry, the people that went to medical school together or law school together or something like that, they're quite close-knit and they keep friends for a long, long time. And they're very happy to refer you to the people that they've studied with or that they know from different conventions in other areas. So you could work with one optometrist, and then eventually, if you do well for him, all the optometrists that he knows, he'd be happy to refer to you as long as they're not in his area. And that's a really great way to sort of build out your business. And another thing about what you said about the keywords, I definitely like to niche down into the specific type of doctor that they're going for. If I was taking a general doctor, I suppose we would do maybe Dr. Miami or whatever, but I'd like to work with specialist doctors more. And what we do even after that is we'll make individual landing pages for their most profitable services. So if we have, let's say, a dermatologist, there's a fungus laser that they have, which is very profitable for them. They make thousands each time they use it. So we'll try to capture all the business for that.
Right.
As well as just general dermatology.
Wow, that's a great tip. So not only are you specializing or niching down within that, that general group of doctors, but you're also going into the exact services that have a higher margin or return for those particular clients, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said in the beginning, that the main thing for me is to get them more business as cheaply as possible, because I don't want to be, someone that comes in, works with them a little bit, and then they're done with me. I want to be their marketing guru or their marketing expert. I want to be their go-to guy. So for everything that they want to do, I want them to come to me and ask me my advice first. And if I don't know the answer or I can't help them, well, I'll lead them somewhere else that they can find that answer. But I think that, when you really get involved in someone's business and you can see how their business is running and you can see where they can fix it, you're not just sort of there for the quick payment. You're there for the long haul. And that's how you keep clients over, many, many years and even lifetime value.
Right. Like we've talked a lot about the clients, and I'd like to go into what that equates to from a monetary perspective. But before doing that, if I could still stay on the same topic of you offering SEO consultancy services to your clients, what have you found to be some of the most beneficial factors or, the key steps, if you could pick three of them, to helping your clients getting ranked to get ranked on Google.
Okay, yeah, sure. Well, I think, the first thing is the structure of the site. And a lot of people, they get their sites built by design firms. And, they'll have a very beautiful and slick site. But that doesn't really mean that Google has any idea what that means. And beautiful is not always best. And what I try to tell my clients, as I'm sure you know, as a consultant as well, I try to tell them what's important to them. I ask them what's important to them, and I say, listen, what's important to you is that you get more patients in the door. In fact, the name of my site for my doctors, where I niche to the doctors, is getmemorepatients.net. And the specific, I chose that title because, that's the benefit that they're looking for. They want more patients. And it's nice to have a beautiful site, but I think the structure of the site is very important. So that's the first thing I do. I go in and I make sure that the back end of the site, the part that Google crawls, that the Google spiders look at, is set up properly so that when Google comes to the site, they understand exactly what that site is about, so it can rank in the proper terms. After that, I think it's very important for them to be listed in all the medical directories that are available for their field. And I think that's important for a couple of reasons. One, I think it helps with Google's SEO rankings and it makes them more relevant. But I think as well that when someone goes searching for a doctor and they're thinking about having a surgery or a procedure or something, people tend to search out the doctor. And if they see them, on their site, then they see them in this directory, then that directory, then this directory, and they have all reviews everywhere, and they seem that, they're out there and they're, reputable. Well, I think it builds a lot of trust with that, potential patient, and I think that helps a lot for them.
Right.
And I think finally after that, it's normal sort of linking and, just really working on getting them, articles and press releases and videos, educational videos, and, getting them out there as much as possible so that, when someone has a question about a procedure, when someone has, wants to know something, they find my client, and my client is, perceived as the expert, and they are the expert, in fact. And so that, their questions are answered before, so they're pre-sold before they even go into the doctor's office.
That's fantastic advice. So looking at all the things that you've mentioned, basically the reason people aren't succeeding online or the consultancy companies that they go with aren't achieving the results that they want could potentially be because of those three reasons. They don't understand the main purpose of their site. Their site isn't viewable from many other directories, or, from a Google Places point of view, there aren't enough citations or reviews to keep them top of mind when prospects are initially searching online. And then that last point, of course. So it brings to the surface what people need to focus on when they're either offering the service or even if they're a small company looking to do it all themselves, so that when they go through that process of getting a designer, that, it's developed in accordance with what Google likes to see. So I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the thing is that even for some companies, you don't necessarily ranking first in Google for certain keywords is not even going to help them. Like I said, you've got to look at the business and the way they get their business and the way they get their best clients. I always say to my clients, who's your best client? What do they come in for? How does it happen? The clients that leave and say thank you and pay you and have a smile on their face when they leave. Who is that person? And we try to really narrow down to find who exactly that client is or that patient is. And then what we do is we try to multiply that type of person as much as possible. Because, it's all well and good to, rank for like mole removal in Miami. And that might, be great, but that might not be their best client. And no one might be searching for that. So I think it's very important to do the research and make sure that you do effective marketing for your client, because just having a site on page one of Google doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to get any business from it.
And it's an awesome way to segue onto another topic, to move to another topic, which is mailing tips. I mean, you mentioned you've got to work out the best way to get your clients. So for you, what you found really handy is doing the direct mail pieces. And then for a lot of like SEO consultants and whatnot, it'll be new ground for them. It's something they'd never considered because they thought that Google and SEO and getting out there online, that's the be all and end all really. But are you able to elaborate as far as how valuable mailing tips or, mailing is for people? I mean, we've already talked about how it sets you up as an authority and makes you different from the existing, pool of SEO consultants currently, cannibalizing themselves, like going after one another and working in the same market. But are there any other insights that you have with regard to direct mailing and its benefits?
Sure. I think it's wonderful personally. And, in my mortgage business, all my clients were gotten from mailings. And in my business, now all my clients have gotten from mailings. I don't, for me, sending emails gets caught in the clutter. I did it a little bit when I started, and I got a couple clients, but, I found that it was almost a waste of time, even when I had someone else doing it. Cold calling and walking cold into businesses, I think, is just a waste of time as well. Now, you can be a great salesman, and maybe it's something that works for you, but for me, it wasn't really what I wanted because, again, it's me asking for business. The thing that I think is wonderful about doing mailings is that you send your mailing, the client opens the mailing, and they decide, yes or no, I'm interested in this. Now, If they're not interested, they throw it away, they never think about it again, no harm. But if they call you or they get in contact with you, well, that's massive because now they've said, I'm interested in what you have to say, I want to learn more. Well, when someone says that, basically your job of selling them is already half done. They've already told you they're interested, that they need or want that service. So for me, it's just an amazing transformation of the conversation. I mean, the conversation you have with someone who's calling you after a mailing is 100 times better than the one when you cold call someone or you walk cold into a business.
Right. Now, for those that are just getting into it, when it comes to mailing, obviously nobody has any idea normally when they do their first mailing how many times they have to mail out in order to judge a result, how they should track the mailings themselves, and then decide on, an acceptable way to proceed as far as keeping certain elements in a mailing, removing them, changing the copy, changing the headlines, all that kind of stuff. Do you have any broad or general kind of rules when it comes to doing that?
I think that you touched on a great point because a lot of people will get a mailing. They'll send it out one time, maybe two times, 50 here, 50 there, and they'll be like, it doesn't work. I'm not going to do it. And I've got to tell you, I've tested thousands of mailings.
Wow.
And it's the only way to get successful with it because, what might work for me might not work for you. You know what I mean? So you have to find what works for you. And it's very important that when you send out a mailing, you have to send at least 100. Now, some people will say, I don't have 100 doctors in my area, this or that, but it's simple to sort of put 50 podiatrists and 50 pediatricians down or something, and you can always expand to outer areas or even 25, 25, 25, and 25 of different types of doctors or lawyers or whatever it may be. But the thing is that you need to send as many as possible. Because that's how you get accurate tests. For my mailings, I never send less than 100, but I don't like to send more than 300 because otherwise I get too many responses and then I can't keep up with them, and I like to service everyone properly.
Okay.
I think it's very important. So, there's many different courses out there on mailings. There's mailings that you can make that you can buy that are pre-made. And I think it's important to, go research, see the different type of mailings that are working. Maybe when you get your junk mail in the mail and you can look at them and see which ones you think would maybe catch your eye if it was something you'd be interested in. Take ideas and, come up with things and test them. Because the truth is, people don't realize is no one's going to remember if you send them one mailing, then you send them a different one a month later or something like that. If it hasn't worked for you, try something else and send it again. And another thing I'd say quickly about mailings, when you don't get responses, you've got to follow up as well. Because a lot of people send the mailing and say, okay, that's it, I'm done. Well, what I do is I have an assistant of mine, and she will call for me the businesses. Now, in my mailing, I put some scarcity in there, and I say to them, I only work with one person in each area, in each field, which is true. And call me soon, or, your spot will get taken, one of your competitors will take it. Now, I don't want to lose my authority by calling them and saying, hey, have you gotten it yet, or something like that. So what I do is I have my assistant call, and she says, hello, doctor, whatever your name is. I'm just wondering if you received Joshua's mailing. He's going through the recipients now who have contacted him. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to be one of the people that he might work with, and just to see if you'd like to speak with him about it. And that way, it keeps my authority. It shows them that I'm speaking with other people, but they still have an opportunity. It's not finished yet, and it gives them one more chance. Now, sometimes they've had the mailing, they weren't sure about it, and that will get them on board. And other times, they haven't even seen the mailing, they've thrown it away directly, but this will get them intrigued and be like, oh, what are you talking about exactly? And then she can elaborate more and maybe even set up a meeting that way. So following up and testing are the two most important things about mailings.
That's incredible. And thank you for sharing that, because I know that this is stuff that people would normally pay a lot of money to find out about, would go through courses in order to learn, and then you've freely given the information on this call. The last thing I wanted to touch on was, obviously you've been able to acquire clients through this process, but for a brief moment, are we able to talk about the monetary aspect of the relationship that you set up between your clients? So now you've got yourself positioned as an authority figure, you have people contacting you, you have a proven system whereby you can test and track your direct mail pieces, and then you've also got a follow-up process that you just mentioned beforehand. But on average, how much have you been able to, through your consultancy business, charge these people once they've decided, hey, I see the value in your service and I am interested in engaging with you and then having you take care of our marketing strategy?
Yeah, sure. I mean, again, it's difficult to sort of give you a number because each doctor is different, each restaurant's different, and every client is different. Now, I don't want you to think as well that I only work with doctors and restaurants, but those are the ones that I would prospect if I was prospecting. If other people come to me and they're willing to, work with me the way on my terms, well, then I'll work with other businesses too. So each business is different. If you have a corporate business that's in a very competitive niche, then it will be difficult to, help them brand themselves as opposed to maybe, someone working in a small town that doesn't have as much competition.
Right.
But for me, I think that, it's what's most important is their customer value. So let's say for them, their value of their customer over a 1-year period, if they get a new customer, for me, it has to be at least $1,000.
Okay.
Now, I want them to be making $1,000 off each new customer they get. Now, I want to get them multiple customers each month, and that way I can charge the fees that I think I deserve. I am not a sort of a chop shop type person that wants to have hundreds of clients and, build a massive business with hundreds of clients paying me small amounts and then, have this huge books and all that to manage. I want to have as few clients as possible and make as much money as possible.
Right.
I want to and I think you know this about me already, and I want to be able to, go play golf on a Wednesday and have my business still running, and it's not to say that I'm lazy or anything, but I want to enjoy my life while I can. And so I think it's important to take only clients that pay you a lot. And when I say that, it might sound a bit weird, but also it's very important to understand that the clients that pay you the most will be your best clients. The ones that pay you $100 here, a couple $100 there, $500, whatever it is. And $500, by the way, is my minimum charge for anything of the most basic work.
Okay.
Those clients who pay you only a little bit will be the most pain in the ass clients that you have. And the ones that pay you a lot and understand your value, those are the ones who are going to say thank you and give you a check, and they're not going to question you, and they're going to work with you the way you want to be worked with. And I think that's very important.
Right. I mean, that's awesome, and it directly relates to my own experience as well. It wasn't 2 days ago that I went to see a client that I'd picked up at the start of this year, approximately in March, I believe, and then developed their website, had it up in about July, and then it wasn't until August where they agreed to get on the program. So when you mentioned that you don't take $500, you take $500 minimum for any kind of work. For my particular business as well, it's on a monthly program, so that once someone's set up, they can end up increasing their ranking over time as well. And then as a result of doing that, after 3 months, they're now number one for 6 of their keyword terms, 6 of their 10 key keyword terms that they needed to get ranked for. And they've also since then been able to get on the first page of Google for 30 other terms as well. So the interesting thing with the client is when I showed it to them, they were really happy. But then it wasn't until I actually asked them, so could you equate a ratio of given how much you're spending monthly, how much you're getting back, and he said that it was roughly 1 to 5. So for, every $500 he spends on this monthly program, he makes $2,500 as well. Yeah. So for him, it's a great business. It's the best thing he's ever done, because now he's seeing so many other avenues. Now we can broaden our search phrases and be able to get more business from him. But I think obviously this is an ideal example. There are probably clients that you have to work on for 6 to 12, if not 18 months before you start seeing rankings for highly competitive terms. But it's a great way to have them paying you joyfully every month. So every beginning of the month, he puts the money in my account, and it's done. It's sorted. No problems.
I mean, that's a great story. And, it's exactly right. When you can charge less than they receive from your efforts, it's a no-brainer for them. Why would they ever stop paying you? And what you've done is you put yourself in a position to start charging more when you bring in different avenues, to bring in different revenue streams and different types of business for that client. Exactly. You're now going to be able to say, hey, we started with this, but, if you want me to do this, I can. And he already trusts you because you've delivered results. You can charge more and more and more. And what I do is, as I said, 500 is my minimum, but that is for the most basic possible work. For anything complicated, my fees are much, much more than that. I prefer to get a few thousand a month at least from each client.
Right. That's an awesome tip for anyone, including myself. So right now, like you say, I've put myself in a better position with them so that I can say, hey, let's increase your spend, and keep on doing that, because if it continues to return that 1 to 5, every dollar they spend, they get $5, then heck, I just convince them to spend $100. And then,
exactly.
Yeah, that's how it works out. So no, that's great information. And the reason I wanted to go through all that stuff, from prospecting to understanding how to rank websites, if that is the primary way of getting new clients, as well as mailing tips, and then finally the consulting amounts, is because I'm aware of your products. I've bought one of them, and I found it very useful for me, and that was the mailing one specifically. The local mail magnet is the one that you had, and then the one I actually grabbed up was Painless Prospects as well. So what I'd like to do is kind of just have a moment to talk about the products that you have created, how they've benefited yourself, and the results you've found as, moving from the space of being a consultant to becoming a product creator.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so it's quite funny how it started. I basically, and I'm sure you work with WordPress yourself, and I was building WordPress sites, or having my assistant build WordPress sites for my clients. And as you know, as a WordPress user, you have to install all these plugins. And I was really getting frustrated that time was getting wasted when I was installing 20 to 30 plugins per site, per client, and sometimes per landing page site. It's taking 20 minutes, half an hour, 40 minutes to sort of get it all up and running. And I just thought it was a massive waste of time. So I spoke with a programmer that I work with, and I said, hey, listen, do you know if there's a way that I can give you all the plugins that I like to use, and we can, automate this so I can just click a button and have them all installed?
Right.
And he was like, yeah, sure. He was like, yeah, sure, no problem. So I was like, okay, that sounds wonderful. So I contracted him, and he built me this plugin in under 3 days, which was amazing to me. And he built me this plugin, and I started, giving it to my assistants and for myself, and I was building sites, and a half an hour, 40-minute procedure was now taking less than 45 seconds. And I was saying, wow, the amount of money I must have just made myself by doing that is amazing. So I worked with it for a while, and I remember then I later was, because I do a lot of mailings, I built myself a way to get leads, because, the way I was doing it before was I was just going through and going to Google, type in, ophthalmologist Miami, and then, take every name, address, and phone number and email address or whatever I needed, but mainly name and address, and just copy and pasting them into a document. Either I would do it or have someone else do it. Even roped my wife into doing it a couple times. and this was at the beginning, and it would take hours to get 300 doctors. You know what I mean? Like literally hours. And then, it was just horrible. And we were so frustrated and annoyed, and I'd be like, okay, there's got to be a better way. So I went back to my, developer, and I said, hey, listen, buddy, you've done a great job. Is there any way that you can, put something together for me where I can put in a keyword, and then you can give me all the results from, Google Places? And I wanted to have, I do some reputation management for doctors because, as you can imagine, if you see a bad review for a doctor, you're not going to go see that doctor. So I helped them a lot with the reputation management. So it was important to have a reputation management factor and have it bring in reviews and everything's for me. And he was like, yeah, sure, no problem. And I was like, wow, amazing. So this one took him slightly longer. It took about a week and a half. But I mean, after a week and a half, it was all done. And I had this thing. I just put in my keywords, and suddenly I had hundreds of prospects there in a downloadable CSV file.
Right.
And I was like, okay, this is amazing. And, I was talking about it in my mastermind group. And as I said, my mastermind members, one of them especially, and he kept saying to me, you've got to release these. I mean, people are going to love these tools. Imagine how much time you're saving and how much time you can save other people. And I was like, oh, I don't know, whatever. If everyone, wants it or whatever. I mean, I just built these for myself. And he was like, listen, trust me, people are going to love these things. So I started with the plugin, and, I released out the plugin, and to my amazement, I had hundreds of buyers, and it's made a significant amount of money from selling it, and, and people really, really appreciated it, and it was wonderful. And so I said, okay, I'm pretty much hooked on this now. So I started building out my byproducts. As you said, you bought my scraper, and, I released that as well. And then I knew that I was getting clients in a way that was easy and that was working for me. So I released that course as well. And so far, those are the 3 products I've released. I have many more coming in the future that are, each product I had built for myself was a bit uglier than when I released it to the public. So I had to revamp them a little bit, make them a little prettier so that people could enjoy them better, a little less clunky. But, it's amazing. And, to be honest, I doubled my income as soon as I started doing that. And I don't say that lightly. It's truly amazing the things that happen when you become a product creator, the doors that open for you, and the fact that, I'm a teacher now as well as a service provider. When I speak to doctors, and if they Google me or look for me, they'll see that I'm a teacher, and it just builds my, my authority even more than it did before.
Right.
And I truly think that anyone that has like a little trick or a little tool or something that can save time or make more money, you really should try to share it with other people, because people identify with that. People want that. Anything that saves time really is something that people want in their lives, because time equals money.
That's so true. And I've, listening to this, it's like I'm having the first conversation I ever had with you back in Utah when we met at the webinar summit. But yours is truly one of the connections that I was very pleased to make amongst all of them, meeting people like John Jonas, David Fry, everyone that was speaking. But primarily, a lot of the value I gained from the summit was in speaking to individuals like yourself who, they're more so, or they're closer to where I'm at as far as my development, my growth within the internet marketing space. And so it was a huge benefit. And I've, like you mentioned, the local mail magnet as well as the Painless Prospects products that you created have helped me to be able to do out several mailings since I've spoken to you. And I'm still in the process of sending them out as well, so that we can continue testing them, improving them, and making sure that all comes together to set me up, like you say, as an authority when I do my consultancy work. So I'm somebody that's speaking from its benefits. For me, it saved a huge amount of time, and it's also fantastic moving from a space of originally having to make cold calls and find out directors or owner names and then call them up and try and get them on the phone and try and tell them how something's broken with their website. It's a huge shift from going from having to make those calls to not worrying about them anymore and just focusing on, the hardest thing for you at the moment is now folding a letter and putting it in an envelope and putting a stamp on it. And what I'd like to do is I'll put a link at the very bottom of the page for anyone that's interested in them. This will be any local marketers as well as marketing managers who may be looking to do direct mail as well, because obviously this will benefit them. But are there any other ways that people can possibly connect with you as well if they wanted to find out more information or give you feedback or just say thank you for the products you've created and the results they've gotten?
Yeah, sure. Well, I have my blog, joshuadboxer.com, And, it's a very honest blog. I go on there and I tell people exactly what's going on. Well, I had a webinar recently, and it didn't go so well. So I let everyone know, the mistakes that I made and the things, why it went wrong. And so maybe people can learn from those mistakes. So anyone's welcome to go there. They have links to all my products there, as well as, my different blog posts from the past. There's an interview I did there actually for the Glazer Kennedy group that you can see as well there. And, you can contact me through that. Absolutely no problem. And I just want to say, that at the Webinar Summit as well, for me, it was great to meet you as well, because not only is it always wonderful to meet another Joshua in the world, but
it is.
But I could see that you're in a similar sort of mind frame to me and a mindset to me, and that you're striving to be the best. And I know you've got some great contracts and you do great work. And I know now you're sort of transitioning as well to building some products that you can sell as well. And I think it's great. And, I really enjoyed the dinners we had and everything. And I really appreciate you inviting me on this call as well.
No, I can't say thank you enough, because, it was great how you managed to hold up the entire restaurant up to almost 11:45 when they actually closed at 10:30, and we continued to just chat it out most of the night. But like I said, there was definitely an awesome experience. And for anyone that's looking to, anyone that's picked up on this call and sees the value in some of the stuff we've talked about, from changing the way you're marketing to looking at, for themselves as well, moving from being a service provider to possibly becoming a teacher or authority who creates products to benefit other marketers or, other people within their specific field. I think this is a huge step, because I've certainly taken a few steps with you, and I've had the privilege, for anyone that doesn't know, but I've worked very closely with Josh, just throwing emails back and forth, hitting you up on Skype for several products that I've been looking to take out of my own internal system, my own business, and then make them so that they can be released to the public. And it's been a huge advantage to be able to network with someone. So I think that's the real key, is going to events or getting in situations where you can, like you say, you have doors open for you, but then you can get in that position where you see somebody of influence, maybe not very high, but on a similar playing field for you, so that you can bat ideas with them. They can tear up those ideas, and then you can, get some sellotape and put them back together again. So I definitely recommend that anyone that's looking to make a change in their lives, improve themselves, improve the quality of their time with family, friends, or just with whatever they do, to definitely start looking at networking with people, like-minded individuals. Like you said, you're in the Dan Kennedy Mastermind. Can you just touch on that and how you got involved with that? Because I think that's been a huge benefit for you too, right?
Yes, of course. And it's like you say, everything's really about relationships, and that's how all business is done. Whether it be through, networking, or when you meet with your prospective clients, you have to build relationships with them, because that's how you'll be long-term with these people. That's where you'll get benefits, where you can help each other. Like we help each other out, me and you. And like you said, I ask you questions about things I'm doing. You ask me questions about things you're doing. And it's just nice to have like-minded people. I know a lot of people in our field, in our industry, you speak to your friends, and it's kind of like you're speaking, like a complete different language to them, and they have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, I was talking with someone trying to explain one of my friends. He's like, okay, so you're a spammer. And I was like, no, I'm not a spammer. I help people with Google. You know what I mean? He's like, what do you mean you help people with Google? How can you help with Google? So people have no idea that you can, really help people this way. And so for me, one of the reasons I joined the mastermind was to be around like-minded people. I wanted to be around people that I could bounce ideas off and speak about my business, and it wasn't sort of talking like to a wall. You know what I mean? And I think it's like immense, the benefits you can get from being in a mastermind and networking with like-minded people, because things that you won't see sometimes, they can see, and they can really like help you, visualize things in a better way, or put it down on paper, or really get it working. And also with masterminds, you get accountability. Because right. I go in there every month and I tell them my plans for the month, what I'm working on, what I'm doing. If I go there the next month and I haven't done anything, they're going to be like, well, what happened to all the stuff you said you were doing? You know what I mean? And so, yeah, for me, it's like, okay, I say that I'm going to do all these things whenever I go there because I know now I have to do those things. Because
Right.
next time I go there, they're going to, make fun of me or whatever if I don't, and they're going to bring me back down to earth. So, yeah, if you can be part of a mastermind, I highly recommend it. I think having mentors is great as well because, for me in the beginning, I had a lot of mentors that really helped me out and, showed me the way because you can't figure out everything yourself. You need to look at the people who are successful, and it's not that you're copying them, but you model what they do. And people that, will help you with that, I mean, I think it's hugely important. Anyone that's super successful in the world in any industry will tell you that they've had a mentor. Anyone. And I'm talking about, presidents to sportsmen to everything. You know what I mean? And I think it's massively important that you build relationships with people in your industry.
Exactly, exactly. And I think that's a fantastic way to close the call. And again, to thank you so much for your time. I mean, this is an interview I've been looking forward to holding ever since I met you at the webinar summit. So again, thank you so much, Josh.
And thank you, Josh. I really appreciate you,